Good morning again, guys. And once again, I have the Dr. Dork headset on, which means it's time for their tool demo. Now, today we're going to go over the belt grinder. Now, like I told you guys, the disc grinder, this is a two-part tool. We have both a disc on the side and a belt on the top here. Now, I want to make sure you guys understand that since this is a very small machine, we should not be operating this with more than one person at a time. So even though we do have a disc grinder on one side and a belt grinder on the other side, we want to make sure that we have enough space to actually adequately move back and forth here and move our material back and forth and make sure we're not going to hit anyone. So even though we do have technically space for two people to operate the machine safely at one time, I only want you guys operating this piece of equipment one at a time. Now this one is very similar to our other one, our wood one. Now our wood one, we can technically operate with both the disc and the belt, but since they are separate places, we can operate this thing simultaneously both at the same time. But the one we have over here, our metal one, we cannot do that. Our metal one can only be operated the belt and the disc at one time. First thing I want to talk about, as always, is PPEs. First thing, glasses. Gotta make sure you have safety glasses on. This thing does produce a lot of sparks, and the last thing you want is that garbage in your eye. Number two is loud. Make sure you have hearing protection. Okay, this thing is going to make some noise. Third, you want to wear hand protection. You want to wear gloves in this thing. Last thing you want to have happen is this thing removing a fingernail in your hand, because I have seen that happening in the past. So it also protects your hands from the heat, and also as an abrasive material that can get caught in the machine as well. So make sure you have gloves on when you're operating this machine. All right, first and foremost, I want to talk about machine setup. Now, just like with the disc grinder, we have an abrasive belt that goes around and around and around the machine here. This machine can be operated with the arm in the down position as you see here, but it can also be operated with the arm in the up position. That is the reason why you see two tool rests on this machine. We have a tool rest here for grinding flat, a tool rest here for grinding angle. So say for an example, you want to grind a 45-degree angle on a piece here, you can actually use this tool rest on the top. However, I want you guys to understand that I don't typically want you using this top tool rest. I want you focusing most of your efforts on the bottom tool rest here. Okay. So even though we have two separate tool rests for this machine, use this one. Okay. Only use this one if there's no reason, or there's a specific reason why you need an angled ground piece on your workpiece. So don't use this unless you absolutely have to. First thing you want to check on this machine before ever using it, you do want to check the abrasive belt for any cuts or tears. You want to rotate the belt around. We can see the seam here where it was put together. We want to check for any rips or tears. If this does have any rips or tears, make sure that you tell me. We need to replace the belt if it does have any rips or tears, because just like with the disc grinder, if there are rips or tears, there is a chance that rip or tear can come around and grab a hold of you or your material as it comes around. So it's vitally important that we are checking our abrasive belt for tears before we operate this thing, because bad things can happen real quick if there are rips or tears in this thing. Same thing is true if it ever comes off track. Now, on that note, this thing requires what's called a tracking setup. What tracking refers to is, as this belt rotates around, tracking refers to the ability of the belt to stay in the center of the drive wheel here. If the belt is too far off one way or another, then it's going to cause premature wear on the belt, and it can actually cause damage to the machine. So you have to make sure that when you're operating this machine, the belt does need to stay centered on the rotating disc right here, because if it's not, it can get in the way of this disc, it can actually grind away on the material on the machine itself. And we need to make sure that the belt is always tracking centered of the bottom disc rotating pulley right here. If you need to adjust the belt tracking, number one, make sure you come and get me first, because I don't want you adjusting the belt tracking on your own. Two, the belt tracking must be adjusted with the machine on. That is the only adjustment on this machine that is ever made with the machine actually running. The belt tracking adjustment is actually this knob right here. If you look at the knob on the side, it actually says belt right and belt left, and that refers to the tracking of the belt as it goes side to side on the machine here. So the belt tracking is the only thing that's ever done with the machine running. So keep that in mind, that if this belt is ever never centered, if it's ever off to one side or the other more than what it should be, then it needs to be having the belt adjusted while the machine's running, not while it's off. If it does it while it's off, if you try adjusting while it's off, then it's going to screw everything up. So don't try to adjust the belt tracking with the machine off. Next, your tool rest on this setup should be the exact same as what your tool rest is for this one, meaning that your tool rest should only be 1/16 of an inch away from the actual belt. This has to be done with the machine off. So this is going to be just like the disc grinder in that your belt, your tool rest should only be 1/16 of an inch away from the actual machine here, from the belt. This is the same reason as it was with the disc grinder. If we have too big of a gap here, there's a chance that your material can get flipped up and you can get caught down inside here. We don't want that to happen because one, it's going to cause damage to your material. Two, it's going to cause damage to the machine. It's probably going to break the belt, or even worse, cause damage to the actual drum that the belt is mounting on. So make sure that your tool rest is always 1/16 of an inch away here. Okay. Also, when you are grinding on this thing, don't try to grind freehand in the middle of the air. If that happens, it's going to grab a hold of your piece, it's going to yank it down onto your hand, and a chance you can get jammed in the machine here as well. So don't try to grind in the middle of the air. Always make sure you have your workpiece resting against your tool rest here, so that way when you're grinding, it's always resting against this, and there's a little bit less of a chance of it getting caught in the belt. As you're grinding, you want to make sure you're moving back and forth like this. Don't ever grind continually in one spot. If you grind continually in one spot, it's going to cause that one spot to have a premature wear, and it's probably going to cause the belt to become over damaged or become damaged too early. So make sure as you're grinding, you are working your way front and back or back and forth across the face of the disc, of the belt here, and that you're not continually grinding one spot. Don't push too hard. Keep gentle pressure on this thing. It will do the job. Don't try to overexert the machine, because if you do, it's going to cause damage to the machine. Same is true up here on our top tool rest. You're going to go back and forth. Don't continually grind in one spot. Don't push really hard. If you push really hard, it's going to cause damage to the belt. It's going to cause damage to the machine. It's going to result in poor grinding quality on your workpiece here. Just like with the disc grinder, we do not grind sheet metal on the belt grinder. The reason why is you can see here, even at a 1/16 inch gap, most sheet metal can still fit down between that gap there. So if we try to grind sheet metal on this machine, three things can happen. Number one, the material can get stuck down inside and cause the belt to get worn or even worse, broken. Two, there's a good chance that instead of grinding material, it will actually bend the material. So it's important that if you do grind, that you don't grind any material on this, that you don't grind sheet metal on this machine, because it's probably just going to bend it, not actually grind it down. Third reason, it causes sharp edges, and it's just generally not good to grind sheet metal on a belt grinder or an abrasive machine like this. You can get caught. It can cause premature wear on the belt, and it can also bend your workpiece too. So just do not be grinding sheet metal on the grinder here. Okay, if you do, then you're probably going to ruin something. You're going to make me really upset because you didn't listen when I told you not to grind sheet metal on. Okay. Same thing as before. We have the on-off switch. You have to pull this little button up to open it up, and we have the on-off switch inside there. Make sure everything's out of the way before you do any grinding on it, and obviously make sure that you are holding your workpiece against the tool rest like this and evenly going back and forth. Okay. One thing I did forget to mention: if you're ever at home and you have to put a new abrasive belt on, there are directional arrows inside the belt here. Okay. Make sure that you follow the direction of the directional arrow